All right, welcome everybody. There's Leslie just in the nick, perfect. Welcome to St. Louis Yoga Week and International Day of Yoga. We have been doing streaming stuff all day since like 7 o'clock this morning. We've been splitting up sun salutations or Surya Namaskar. We're doing 108 today, and I think last I checked, we're at about 60. So there's still some time to get your Surya Namaskar in if you'd like. I'm very happy to have this panel together today of Sai Sabnivas, Rahul Parikh, and Dr. Santanam, and then Leslie, who's going to be moderating this panel discussion on yoga as a way of life. We oftentimes think of yoga as poses and touching our toes and that sort of a thing, and that's certainly a part of it, but not all of it. So I'm very much looking forward to this discussion today. So Leslie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Al. Thank you very much. Well, so nice to see all of you gentlemen today.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm excited about this discussion because in the West, we say yoga and right away people just assume you're going to go to a class and you're going to put your foot behind your head and maybe you'll say Om. And they don't take it too much further, and yoga is so much more. And so maybe the first thing we could do is each of you could maybe tell a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and maybe just tell a little bit about yourself. I think that would be a nice start. So Rahul, maybe you start and then we'll just go around the group.
Sure. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
A bit of history. My grandfather was a lifelong associate of great soul Mahatma Gandhi. For 35 years, dedicated himself on Gandhian principles and programs. And then it so happened that my father was married to great-granddaughter of the Mahatma. So I'm very fortunate to be in lineage of the Mahatma. And on the other side, I have a rich legacy of my grandfather and father. Following their footsteps, I also worked on Gandhian institutions during 35 years of my life in India. So exploration and different philosophies and spirituality has been our, let's say, family tradition. Fast forward that, I have been working in WashU Medical School for the last 29 years. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very rich history. Very rich history. Okay. Say, maybe you go next.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Sai Sabnivas. So I have been into this spiritual path from the age of 4 years. So I have been to many gurus and many masters, and I learned many things during my spiritual journey. And during this process, I also learned Vedas, Upanishads, and especially this Raja Yoga path and meditation. And I started teaching meditation for the past 15 years in St. Louis. And basically, I'm a software engineer by profession, but a spiritual scientist by passion.
Okay. Thank you. And Dr. Santanam?
Yes, my great-grandfather took sannyasam, and I learned many things from my grandfather. And I worked for 25 years in an institute called Math Science in Chennai as a professor. And then in 1989, we moved to the St. Louis University as a professor. Now I am a retired emeritus professor there, still holding an office there. And I was a student of two great people. One is Professor Abdul Salam from Pakistan, who is a British resident, who had a United Nations Institute in Italy. So I graduated with him with a PhD. And then I moved over to India to take another PhD from University of Chennai under Alladi Ramakrishnan, whose father was one of the people who wrote the Indian Constitution. And after moving here, I am closely associated with the Hindu temple here. I occasionally give some discourses, but my knowledge is only through books and otherwise. My great admiration is to Ramana Maharishi, and we are followers of the Paramacharya of Kanchipuram, Shankaramadam, who has written volumes about the Vedas and the normal things of Hinduism. So I follow it very closely. And my interest in Bhagavad Gita started about 30, 40 years back. We are in St. Louis for the past 31 years. And this started in Germany when I was with my family. That was in the year 1976 and 77. Since then, Bhagavad Gita has been guiding me in all my problems, and it gives me a lot of solace. One thing nice about it is there is no mention of a word of Hinduism there. It is a way of life which is accurate and logical. So I am a sincere student of Lord Krishna. I go there to the temple as much as possible, except for this last 6 months when I am almost house kept. And still we do voracious pujas at home. My wife, Kamakshi, she is the champion in it. We do a lot of pujas and Sahasranamams at home for the sake of the society, which is now suffering a great deal. Now back to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's a very rich background we have here. I think we should be able to get some really wonderful information. So I think a lot of times, as we said, in the West, you say yoga and right away, I think a lot of people, they picture exercise, but it's so much more. So maybe each of you would just take a minute or two and give your interpretation, your knowledge on yoga. What is yoga? When somebody mentions, I had just a small quote from Swami Satyananda, and he said, when you do something, do it with 100% of the mind. Don't do it halfway. Whatever you do it with full concentration, and that is yoga. So for each of you, what is yoga? So we'll just go in the same pattern that we did each time, and that'll make it easy. So Raul, if you want to go ahead, what is yoga?
Sure. What you said is true. And if you ask 100 people, they would all have their own perception of what yoga is. And that's perfectly fine. Literally, the Sanskrit word yoga means to join. Join what? My limited individual self with the supreme self or the universal consciousness. Now, how do I do that? I have to expand my field of awareness. So in practical terms, yoga is to transcend our physical and mental limitations, expand our sensory perceptions so that we feel connected to the immensity of the life. It's an exploration, something to know, understand, and experience within ourselves, not just the theory or not just the philosophy. Science is for the external well-being. Yogic science is for the internal well-being. So yoga is basically a well-being of body, mind, and spirit. Physical exercises, asanas, poses, mental exercises, concentration, meditation, ultimately to reach the goal of spiritual well-being. Let's put it this way, that all what we experience is within our own consciousness, within our sensory perceptions. So philosophically speaking, yoga is nothing but the expansion of our sensory body and feeling unity and interconnectedness with the others. That's in short what yoga is.
Thank you. That's great. And that full awareness, just expanding upon what's in us, reaching out. Okay, say
So, in my perspective, yoga is an art of living. So it's which creates a natural contentment and also a self-discipline. And yoga is beyond our concept of this union. So it takes us to the different dimensions from physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and beyond. So it's the reason why I said the art of living is it gives the pleasure of the physical health and happiness. At the same time, it opens up a spiritual channel in the system. So, which would elevate the consciousness and expand the awareness. And when we are with the awareness, what happens is the power of now, it creates the power of now. And when we are in union with bhakti, the devotion, it's called as a bhakti yoga.
Mhm.
What happens is when body and mind are together, it is called attention. When body is present and mind is absent, it is called tension. So yoga tries to develop this attention, this expansion of awareness. So that is basically it's the art of living. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Santana?
Yes, Aurobindo Ghosh, he defines yoga as a skill in work, not in any work. Our body consists of three elements according to Shastras. One is the mundane one, which is called Shariram, Stula Shariram. Then the next stage is the Sukshma Shariram, which is the mind. Then there is a Karana Shariram, which is the Jnanam, Buddhi or intellect. So the intermediary one, which is the Manas or mind, is the one which shows a reality of a false reality of what exists outside. It can connect to the lower body of the Shariram, or it can take us to the intellectual one. It is an intermediary one, and yoga is to train it so you are not bonded to the body, which connects you with all attachments to the outside world. So that is the main yoga that we practice, that you enjoy the life, unlike many people who think that you cannot live well and become a sannyasi all the time. No, you live well, but at the same time use your intellect to show that this is only not a permanent one, but the real object is somewhere else. So the transition, as was mentioned by my earlier expert here, is the connection between two things. One is the finite body. Even the most healthy man lives maybe for 100, 120 years. On the other hand, the Brahman, which is undefined, it is eternal, and there is no definition to it. So the transition from one to the other is what we call as yoga. And it takes a long time. There are many, many methods of doing it. One simple one is the body, because it houses this Atman inside. So you have to protect this body. Otherwise, you ruin. Your life is spent without anything. So the body is to be protected, and great Patanjali and others gave many descriptions of protect the body and increase the strength and power by yoga. Yoga means giving power to the elements. If you don't use some part of your body, then it disappears over the period. On the other hand, the infinite one on the side is not defined. So all the yogas, many yogas, one I described as Karma Yoga, then I said Sannyasa Yoga, which is gifted of few people like Christ and many others. And the third one, which is the most easily workable, is the Bhakti Yoga, which was mentioned by my predecessor. So the Bhakti Yoga is easier to follow. And how do we do it? we do it with a dhyanam. And the dhyanam does not have to address to a given Lord. It is your choice. But what do you do in the dhyanam? Ultimately, you make a self-inquiry of yourself. Why were I born? What am I intended to do? And am I doing it right? Isn't it that we are born to keep the peace in the world and harmony in the world? How do I contribute to it? And how can I increase my power to do it? These are the things that are described in yogas. So that is my brief introduction.
Well, and I think that leads really well into at this time where everything in the world is in the United States for sure is so unstable. Yoga seems very important. Certainly above and beyond just physical asana, even though they're also very important. But a really common question for people starting out, and you have to start somewhere, people have to start somewhere, and in a Western culture, they seem to start with asana practice. And when they begin to start, one of the questions that they have is yoga a religion? Am I practicing someone else's religion? Am I practicing Hindu religion? How do you answer that when somebody asks that question? Because for me, I've practiced yoga a long time, and you never want to take away from the roots of what yoga is. It's very important, from where it comes from. But how do you answer somebody that question, is yoga a religion?
I will probably try to address the question.
That'd be great.
I don't think yoga has anything to do with a very specific religion. It is universal. It's a conditioning of the mind to stabilize it. All frustrations, all the tensions which causes bodily and other aches, they are due to the mind. Mind creates things that we do not think they are real at all. So this discipline of the mind, make it into a steady mind. Chitta prajna, as Gita would call it. Steady mind. And that doesn't address, is not particular to any religion. And more important, the main connection of the bodily one and mind to the ultimate Atman, it has nothing to do with any particular religion. In fact, religion, if you really analyze, has come out of a thought process. And the Brahman, the one entity, is beyond the thought process. So it is universal. And so the religion does lead you. It's a ladder which disciplines you. And that could be different in different regions, depending on so many factors. However, the goal being one, I think yoga can be practiced by people of any religion, any section of the society.
Thank you. Thank you. Jump in.
And
Okay. Go
yeah,
ahead, Sai.
yeah, okay. So in my perspective, I like to one verse in Bhagavad Gita. It's the 2nd chapter and the 48th verse. It says, Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangham Tyaktva Dhananjaya. That is Krishna says. Yogastha Kuru Karmani means whatever the work you do with that infinite consciousness, the soul infused consciousness. Okay, when you are infused with the soul instead of the personality, that infinite consciousness, that energy, then everything you do will lead to a perfection. So what it says is, infinite consciousness doesn't have any religion to it. So no one can define it. So that consciousness with which we work, infuse, then everything will become perfect. Not only that, he says Sangam Tyaktva. That means non-attachment. You should not expect any results out of your action. But keep doing with the divine consciousness, infused consciousness, with the soul, complete concentration, that focus, the steadfastness, the steadiness. So it doesn't have any religion. That's what he says.
Thank you. Thank you. Rahul, do you like to add to that?
A couple of points. As we saw, it's a science, philosophy, and practices. It has nothing to do with religion or Hinduism or any other tradition. Now, it is true that Adi Yogi, Lord Shiva, is considered to be the first who developed the yogic science thousands of years ago. Its origin is in India. That's all. It's like saying that, if a medicine or a treatment works for me, but if it was developed somewhere else in the world, should I reject it? Do I become Italian if I eat pizza, or a Mexican if I like tacos? It's something like that, I think we should be more interested in the benefit than the origin.
Thank
Aren't we more interested in the fragrance of the incense stick or a candle than the stick itself?
Yes.
It's like going beyond our normal perception. And also, Leslie, there is a deeper psychological meaning behind it, that our intellect function according to the identity we assume. If I'm identified with one ideology or one belief, my intellect try to serve that only. It's very hard for me to see or accept anything beyond that ideology or that belief. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Those were all wonderful. And I think that that is really good information for a lot of people who don't really understand. They wonder. And it kind of leads into my next question that people also wonder. And I think there's a very important difference between yoga and exercise. I think, you get yoga asana and exercise. You can, you're going to get movement. You're going to take care of your body, like Dr. Sanathan said, but it's not the same thing. Would you care to kind of talk about that a little bit? The difference between going to a yoga class and just going to an exercise class. Anybody want to start?
Yeah, I can take.
Thank you.
Okay. So the main difference between the exercise and the yoga practice is how you regulate your prana, the life force. Because exercise is just a mechanical process, it doesn't involve any kind of breathing process like the prana, how to regulate prana, how to see breath is different from the prana, the life force.
Yes.
So breath is just a vehicle where it carries the prana into your system. And along with the breath, along with the life force, it also brings in that oxygen. So the life force is the foundation of any life. If there is no prana, then
no life.
Becomes what's a corpse. So people call it as, if you have a prana life force, you call it as a Shiva. If you don't have the pranic force, you call him as a Seva.
So your yoga practice really is your foundation, yoga as life. It's you need that yoga practice to have yoga as part of your life,
Part of your life.
yoga lifestyle.
Yes, yoga lifestyle, exactly.
Anybody have anything you want to add to that?
I just wanted to add, maybe it's just repetition. Exercise is mostly to do with the body, but yoga is much more. It's more universal. It addresses to the mind. And as was rightly pointed out, the yoga, which is advised in Gita, for instance, is detachment. And Shiva, in the symbolic sense, stands for detachment. And detachment means no bondage. So symbolically, we picture it with a vibhuti or ash, because ash, as far as we know scientifically, is the least bounded one. And all our associations to life comes from the body. So when the body disappears, we either burn, cremate, or bury. So he is supposed to symbolically live there. So all being so, the yoga is much more than bodily exercise.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, no question that asanas are part of the whole yogic process. But as defined by sage Patanjali, the whole yogic process is 8 steps. And we
Yeah.
have yamas and niyamas, which are basic disciplines and controls. Then we go into the asana, find a comfortable posture where we stay there for a long time. Then we go into pranayam, control of our prana. Then we go into pratyahar, which is withdrawal of the senses. And then further we go into dharana, concentration, dhyan, meditation, and ultimate samadhi, which is a superconscious state. So basically it leads from physical well-being, physical exercises, to mental well-being, to spiritual well-being. So yes, asana is part of it, but if we look at more holistically, it has way more benefits than just doing asana for our physical well-being.
So if you have students, when you have students, or if you have somebody that were to come to you and all they're doing is asana and they want more, where would you guide them? What would you guide them to do? Do you have something that you would guide them to? You know, they're saying they don't know what direction to take. Do you have any recommendations? You know, right now all they're doing is asana. And they,
There are
I-
several sources. Nowadays, Google has become our guru, you know.
yes, it has.
So even on Google, we can find, you know, this Ashtanga Yoga or Patanjali Yoga Sutra, or, you know, after Patanjali wrote the Yoga Sutras in 196 verses, it needs detailed explanation. So several sages and masters have done analysis of those. So starting from Vivekananda to many other masters. So even those books are available on Amazon or any other website. So there are several starting points that one can start with in expanding beyond the asanas.
Thank you.
I may add up one small thing, just an addition. When you do, for example, Surya Namaskaram, then at the same time, think of, go above yourself and look at the sun. It is called Surya Namaskaram because, you know, all the plants wait for our roses this time blossomed so much in my house. They wait for sun to appear. So the asanas that you practice, you know, it's very critical of the period they grow. Even if you feed it with all the fertilizers, roses don't bloom in the peak of winter. So you can provide an atmosphere, and that is what asanas provide. It creates one so that you get the benefit of it. So always go above you and think of something which exists outside.
Oh,
After all, we are one among many creations. We may think too much of ourselves, but there is a universal one. And this spirit, when you do the exercises or asanas, that will help to make your mind, make up your mind and stabilize it.
thank you.
Okay, I would recommend when we do asanas, whichever the asana you take, what I wanted to suggest is bring more awareness into what you are doing. So when you are doing Surya Namaskar, see how each and every asana, the posture, is bringing more awareness or more vibrations, where the vibrations are happening. Observe your body. So where the pain is happening. So do it with complete awareness. When you have the complete awareness, then that asana itself becomes the divine, that becomes the meditation. So
Meditate.
in my experience, I'll just give you my own experience. So when I sit and meditate, automatically there are certain things happen in my body. That means, suppose if the body needs some namaskara asana, what it does is automatically, without your intervention, involuntary thing happen. My hands go up, and then fold. Namaskara asana will come. Suppose if my body needs to bend, it automatically bends. That means body is the supra intelligence machine in this entire universe. Body knows how to heal itself.
You
So
have to listen.
the only thing it requires is how much awareness you put into that. Then only you can feel that healing effect of that asana, that mudra.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is what I say. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So, kind of a final question for each of you to take a few moments that we're really interested in is, can you talk a little bit about a way in which yoga has really impacted your life personally? If you think about it for a moment, and anybody that would like to start, but a way that yoga has been really important in your life and impacted your life that you'd like to share with us.
Maybe I will start with one.
Sure.
You see, though I worked with so many and people who have worked very close with me on the close subject, some of them have earned a bigger name in the scientific world. I am a professor of science. Many times it depressed me, that I was not looked at, that I did not get enough recognition of the work I have done. This sometimes went to my mind, almost becoming a crazy man. But those times I practiced yoga, conditioned my mind, then after all, I have done the best of my job. There is a statement in Bhagavad Gita, which was very exemplified by Annie Besant, the famous person who started the Theosophical Society of the world. And what did Krishna say to Arjuna is, I have already done the war. You are an instrument to what I have destined. You had the honor to be, you were honored to be an instrument. The ultimate result is I would have done it even without you. But you being an instrument because you are gifted, you are my friend and you worship me. So many times I did yoga to balance my mind, to keep it in right form. Otherwise, I would have thought I lost this, I lost that. And many people, including me, yoga has helped when we are in distress. For example, many things which you are unable to do in life, you do your best with your body, mind, intellect to help people. But there are many hundreds and thousands of things which are beyond you. And those times you think, not depressed, but leave it to someone who is there, who will take care of it. Take, for example, the present condition of the virus in the world. Every doctor is working, but they have not yet found a vaccine. So one is to get depressed on it. The other one is to see, this is what has been destined by nature. I protect myself. People have to protect. But let us watch and things will smoothly move out and we will regain this old one. And this concept comes to me by practicing yoga. It gives me a balance of mind.
Balance, yes.
Balance.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I might add that the best I have gained from not just yogic, but any spiritual practices or philosophies to create an awareness in myself, not just the body. I'm not only even my mind, I'm something more than that. So in adverse or difficult situation, if I can create a distance from my thoughts and feelings, then I find it less stressful. And then it helps me come out of it much faster. So I benefited from yoga by looking at it as a more of a lifestyle, not just one exercise or one process in my life.
And I think that what you just said, both of you, I think that that's where yoga as a lifestyle would be, is so much benefit in our world right now as it is, where people have to quarantine. If you have that kind of a practice, that kind of belief,
Yeah.
so beneficial. And just with the discord that's going on, I just think it's if everybody could just do yoga right now, it would be so beneficial. You just want, you stand there and you think, oh, if everybody could just get up in the morning and do sun salutations. You feel like it would just help the world. Just everybody, please do sun salutations. Okay, can you tell us about yours?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so there are three things that I really learned from this yogic life. So one is Jnanagni Dagdha Karmana, the first thing. As the wisdom comes to you, the knowledge comes to you, all that inhibitions you have been carrying, the behavioral patterns that you have been carrying, they get shattered and a new lifestyle begins to open. Okay, like I'll give you an example. The food habits, uncontrollable palate,
Yes.
Than that, we know that how to eat right food and how to eat moderate food and how to do the fasting, no food. So that capacity will come to you. And also how to use the right words, how to speak less and speak only when it is needed. That moderation will come. And also how to develop the mauna, the silence will come to you. In the same way, how to develop the right thoughts. And also think only when it is needed. Rather than becoming a slave to the mind, you control the mind. And then no thought zone, just develop that, get into that meditation zone. That is the first thing. And the second thing is Mamatma Sarva Bhutatma. Treat whatever the soul, that consciousness you carry, it is in the same consciousness you are carrying everyone. Like a balloon, it is not outside of the balloon that takes it up. It is inside of the balloon that takes it. Right? In the same way, everyone carries that inside energy. So you respect, love others, show compassion, kindness to others. And the third thing is very important. Ignardam Kuru Karmani. Always serve others, pray for others. Whenever there's a need, try to extend your hand as a service. So this is, as you said, yoga is a lifestyle. So this improves your perception and also develops you as a human being.
That is wonderful. Thank you all. Elle, if you are there, are there questions? I don't know if there was any questions that anybody had.
I'm not seeing anything posted. A question that I would have is what advice would you have for somebody who has been going to, a yoga studio, sort of a typical Western yoga space? What advice would you have for them if they're really interested in diving in beyond that in their practice? What's next?
And I would encourage them to live like a yoga way. The reason, I'll tell you an example. Suppose if you want to eat food, all 8 limbs of yoga come into picture. You need to be externally, internally, you should be pure. Right? That cleanliness is for both internal and externally. And then you should sit a certain posture which is comfortable to you and to eat. Correct? Then you should not think about the work and all other things. So pratyahara, you need to take everything into internalize, like inward, and focus on what you are eating. Rather than people watch TV, think about something, do something and eat. So that is not a yoga style. So like that, jhana, like when you eat, you should have a dharana, that focus, attention and everything. So what I'm saying is, it's a yoga is not, it's like different from your daily activities. So in every activity, you find yoga. That is what I advise.
I may add a small thing. And there is a sloka in Tamil, which I will just translate it. There is no need for a medicine if you eat frugally and consciously. So whenever you go to a restaurant, I don't mean to say that you should avoid temptations, but know that you are feeding the body something going in. You have to live with food, but eat frugally. And as was rightly said by my predecessor, so you have to apply caution in cleaning yourself, even in the food habits. That is the simple, not advice, but suggestion I have.
Thank you.
What El mentioned is a kind of a common struggle with all human beings. On one hand, we want self-preservation, we want protection, we want safety. On the other hand, it is our inherent nature for limitless expansion. We want to expand all our faculties limitlessly. The body and mind are limited instruments. And the process of survival is physical in nature, while the longing for boundlessness is metaphysical in nature. So what we need is to create a necessary awareness and to separate the two processes and try to explore beyond my body, mind, and my emotions. Go beyond that.
I want to add one more thing,
You
little
can be
thing.
your self guru. You don't need another guru for doing it.
Right.
Our self, gurus.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing. As he said, Rahul said, introspection is your inner guru. Right. So whenever you are doing yoga, as soon as you are done with the yoga practice, asana practice, what you do is, what is the change I am seeing within me?
Mm,
Am I transformed or not? Is my behavior changed? My attitude changed? How I am reacting to this? Am I reacting or responding to the society? So so this is what you have to think about. That will expand your awareness, your consciousness. It'll be good.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Such wonderful information and so nice to meet all of you. Thank you.
It is very nice you organized it. We are able to address,
Yes.
that's so very nice. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think,
Thank you.
for me, the thing that I have learned through yoga is that you can either use it as a way to sort of avoid dealing with things, right? Like it can be a way where I can just kind of float off into my happy place and not deal with the things that I don't want to deal with. Or it can be something where I can really turn in and take big bites out of life, and it's messy and it's not all floating on top of mountaintops and soaring through the clouds, but that is the world that I want to live in, is one where we take on the things that need to change. And I think that that's especially true in the world right now. And Rahul and I sort of talked about it briefly the other day about how there's a lot of inner work that needs to be done in order to be able to go out in the world and create sustainable and meaningful and long overdue change in our country and in our world.
Yes, there is. There is.
But you are the real messengers. You two and all the other teachers and practitioners are really carrying the message. So please keep it on.
Thank you. And here I just thought I was trying to learn how to touch my toes.
I know. There's so much more on the way down.
Thank you for all the great work you are doing. Keep up great work.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I really have appreciated learning and listening from each of you this week. And Leslie, thank you so much for moderating this panel.
And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, well, we will stop the live stream then. And for those of you who are watching live, coming up at around 1 o'clock, there's going to be a beginner's yoga practice that you can join with Jackie Keneally. And we're continuing to do live stuff all day. If you can't join live, these will all be available to rewatch anytime. So you can come back and watch this again if you want. We're also offering everything at no cost, but if you are able to make a financial contribution, either through purchasing something on our retail shop at stlyogaweek.com, we have these kits that support wholly St. Louis local businesses and entrepreneurs, and we're raising money for the St. Louis Yoga Teacher Relief Fund. So to provide some financial relief in the form of $500 grants for yoga teachers in the St. Louis area who have been really deeply impacted financially through COVID-19 disruptions, as well as grants for Black yoga teachers in our community who are sharing the practice within their communities to help boost resilience and really try to take care of one another and of our community as a whole. So learn more about that at stlyogaweek.com, and thank you all again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.